Hi, I'm with Sergeant Jesse Harris with the Lexington Police Department. Sergeant Harris was just awarded by our office for being exemplary Sergeant of Crimes Against Children Unit and handling the most difficult cases the police department has or has to deal with. Sergeant Harris, can you tell us a little bit about how long you've been with Crimes Against Children and what it's like to lead a unit like that?
Yes, actually, I was assigned to that unit in March of 1997. So, a pretty good long time. I was first assigned as just a normal crimes against children detective. I did crimes against children investigations for 6 years in that capacity. And then in 2001, I was promoted as the supervisor of the crimes against children. I made the rank of sergeant, and I've been in that position ever since.
Well, that's fantastic. I was just talking to Sergeant Harris. I actually used to be a social worker with the Cabinet for Health and Family Services and do child abuse investigations. This was a later in life changing career that I don't really think would have continued if I hadn't met Sergeant Harris. He not only handles his job as a police officer and a sergeant of the Crimes Against Children detectives well, but he also in that position has to deal with an awful lot of social workers. The law says that child abuse in our state is investigated jointly with law enforcement and social service social workers. Because of that, I know personally that Jesse has trained an awful lot of social workers that work in our area. He provides answers. He helps social workers that may not be used to working with police understand kind of how to deal with police and how to work together in a way that benefits the community. So I'm certainly in appreciation for Sergeant Harris with that. Also, personally, he introduced me to my husband. So we go back far enough that there's admiration that I hold for the job that he does, but also for the person I know him to be. In particular, our office dealt with a case that Sergeant Harris was a very important part of, in that it was a horrific child abuse case where Sergeant Harris managed to get the perpetrator of this crime to make a confession. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, we got this case. The victim's name is Caitlin Stennett, and we were first notified about Caitlin's injuries in November of 2008. Actually, we had two what ended up being child deaths that occurred the same day. So our office was really stretched to try to cover both of those investigations, and I was assisting in the investigation of the injuries to Caitlin, and was called to UK Hospital. And when I arrived there, I knew it was a very, very serious matter. Caitlin eventually died from her injuries. But my primary role in that investigation initially was to interview the suspect, which was Brian Crabtree, and that interview lasted several hours. And as a part of that investigation and that questioning, Mr. Crabtree did eventually admit to raping and murdering the victim, Caitlin.
And that is probably also more important than most people know. In child abuse, one of the difficulties and hardships that goes on is that the victim in a fatality case obviously is dead, but even when they're not dead, the child is not usually in a position to be able to recount the events that occurred. So because of that, the interview with the perpetrator, no matter how much we're guessing at or know or believe about what occurred, is going to be the whole process is going to be benefited so much by getting that person to confess. So in that case, which was a particularly horrific one, it was such an important aspect to the job, and a big reason why our office wanted to commend Jesse, although he has certainly been the recipient of past awards of this office because of his stellar work. Thank you for talking with us today.
Thank you for having me.